So we're going to do a quick video now to show you how to strip down the front suspension struts, rear suspension struts on the Boxster. It's a follow-on from removing the suspension from the car, so it's a little more in depth. It shows you how to strip it down. For this purpose, we're changing the bump stops, top mounts, and replacing the springs. So we're going to be removing the top mount, which means undoing the nut here. But before we can do that, we have the spring in situ, which means it's compressed. So the spring is a lot longer than the length we see here. So we need to take the tension off the spring before we can undo the top. So what we're using, a pair of DIY spring clamps. You can get some really elaborate kit, but we just need something really basic. And with the spring clamps in place now, you can see the spring has been compressed. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a spanner. We're going to put a spanner onto the end of the nut to hold the nut still. And then we're going to use a Torx bit. We're going to hold that one in place with a ratchet. We're going to slip the spanner over the end. And then we're going to undo the nut and hold in the centre of the strut tight with the Torx bit or with the cap driver, whichever you use. Having removed the top nut and the washer, the top mount now is loose and free to pull off. We'll look at that one in a moment. I'm going to lift up the strut and then take off the spring. So we've taken off the top mount now. As you can see, it's got a rubber bush in the centre, and what happens is the rubber bush splits and you'll get a knocking noise. So we're looking for splits. There are reinforced parts to the side of the bush there. We're making sure the bush is nice and tight with no splits on the rubber either side. That one's all good, so we're happy to refit that one. And as you can see by the colour, it's not that old on this particular model. This is the top mount bearing. Notoriously, they become noisy. Way of testing these: grip them between the palms of your hands, just rotate them. If there's any roughness or any play there, then it needs to be replaced. And again, this one is in good condition. It's a little bit dirty, so we'll just clean them up with some solvent. But again, that one's going to be reused and refitted. And on the bottom of the bearing, there's a rubber cap here, which just allows the spring to seat against it without having metal to metal and create any horrible noises. Put those to the side. Bump stop. It's very important when you're working on the strut, you don't clamp this part of the body in a vise. There's a very thin tube here and some very intricate valving, and the dampers need to be able to move up and down. If it's slightly ovalized, you'll destroy the damper, so never clamp them in the vise. You can clamp them on the webbing here, as you can see there. You can clamp them on that part there, but you must never clamp them in the vise around the cylinder of the body itself. We're going to have a look at the spring mount here, and you can see there's a little step in here. So this part of the step fits in where the spring has got the end here. So when we put it on, it will fit into this corner here. So before we do that, the gaiter and the bump stop goes on. Slide that one down out of the way. Then we've got the small tapered spacer. Now you can see this has got a rounded collar at the top. So this allows this strut to be used with this type of bearing. So we put that on with a rounded shoulder against the rounded shoulder. Like so. Then on top of that, we'll fit a washer. Bevel downwards. We can now slip our spring over, and that will allow us to assemble our top mount. So our bearing goes on top with a rubber washer into the spring. Then we fit on our top mount. On top of that, we add our washer shaped upwards, and then we fit our locking nut. And now what we do is tighten everything up, and then we'll release the spring clamps. And there's the rebuilt strut, shock absorber, ready to go back on the car. And the whole job's taken probably about 10 minutes.